Ladies and gentlemen, Madison, the Black Eagle.
You know, I went back, Dr. Robert Williams, and thank you so much for coming on. I went back to an article written by John McGuire in 1977, titled Professor Robert Williams has written an IQ test for blacks that isn't jive. And now I'm on Washington U's campus, and this is true. I'm going to read this paragraph. It says, at Washington University, Williams is sometimes called savior by grateful black students. I was one of them, one of those grateful black students. But many of his faculty colleagues take a harsher, they're writing in present tense, a harsher view of his black intelligence test of cultural homogeneity. Williams has nicknamed it Black Intelligence Test Counterbalance for hunkies or bitch. They called me a separatist, saying I was really talking about lowering standards for blacks. He also received an anonymous letter saying the FBI had proof he was a communist. Boy, have we heard that before. How long has that been going on? Wow. But it says you grew up, poor family out of Arkansas. Parents had no formal education, but you at that time refused to allow your 8 children to take standardized IQ tests. Why?
Right. That's true. Why? Because I felt that there was cultural bias in there, and I knew that my kids were very bright and that they were not going to score well on the test because it was stacked. The questions were stacked against them. All of my kids went on to college, graduated, some with honors, 1 PhD, 3 MAs, 2 RNs, and they've just done well, and they didn't take IQ tests or they didn't take standardized tests.
IQ test again. What, for over 75 years?
At least.
At least 75 years.
Mm-hmm.
Arthur, and who was Arthur Jensen?
Arthur Jensen was a psychologist at the University of Berkeley who claimed that blacks were inferior to whites, that we not only inferior, but we were genetically inferior, that we had inferior genes with regards to intelligence. And he conducted a number of studies using IQ tests that were biased against blacks to prove, in quotes, that we were inferior. So that's why I developed the Black Intelligence Test to contradict his research, because people were beginning to believe that we were not as good as white folks.
And in terms of we pulled up some of the questions I think that we had, but does most of your studies, your theories, your premises, your facts, would they apply today?
Sure.
Really?
The same idea applies today. There are kids who are scoring low on IQ tests and are going on to high school, college, graduate school, and finishing with honors. In fact, 1 or 2 of my students were at the conference last week, and one of them is president of a California university, California State University, and did not score high on the IQ test. So and I was told that I had an IQ of 82, but I went on through college, graduated with honors, distinction in the field, got a master's from Wayne State, PhD from Washington University, the first African American to get a PhD in psychology from Washington University.
So why is it then that we have this still going on? I mean, with the books you've written, the studies that you've done, all the evidence to the contrary.
Well, let me tell you why it's still going on. You may have heard this story, but there was an African father reading stories to his son about man fighting a lion. And in the stories, the lion was described as being the king of the jungle. He was the fiercest and most agile animal in the jungle. But in the stories, the lion always lost to man. So the son asked his father one day, "Daddy, how is it that the lion can be the king of the jungle when he always loses?" The father said, "Son, man is writing those stories. When the lion learns to write, the endings will change."
Mm-hmm.
So it's the fact that the persons who are writing the stories and doing the research are doing it from their perspective, and they support what they believe. Now, when we write, we find a different results, and that's because we have a different perception of black life, black culture in this country.
In other words, a different perspective is based on like all perspective is based on one's experience.
Exactly, and on one's philosophy and one's belief. If you believe that you are inferior, or if a group is inferior, your research will show that, because that's what you're set to prove, that particular hypothesis, and most of them prove it. But they use biased materials. For example, some of the questions that they ask are drawn from Eurocentric culture. Therefore, a Eurocentric answer is what they're looking for, and not a black answer. Now, in my research, I showed that the tests were clearly biased.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I showed that in one test where there were 3 squirrels climbing a tree. One was shown at the base, one in the middle, and one at the top.
All
and
right.
The question was, ask the child to point to the squirrel that is beginning to climb the tree. Now, many of my kids were missing that question because of the word beginning. So we changed it to point to the squirrel that is fixing to climb the tree.
Okay.
And all of the kids were able to get the question correctly.
Because culturally we know what fixing means.
Yes.
Yeah. And the one at the base was fixing to climb the tree.
Exactly. Or there was one which showed ask a child to point to the toy that is behind the sofa. Now there are 2 words there that kids may not know in their culture: behind and sofa. Now, how many black people call a couch a sofa?
Not many.
Not many.
Right. Because that's
So
what
we
we called
changed
it
it
at
to-
home, the couch. We didn't call it a sofa.
Exactly.
Right.
And the kids-
I remember another one that I remember sitting in one of your lectures, Harry Carey.
Yeah, okay.
If I just did it with the staff here. If you had multiple choice, what is Harry Carey? And depending, if you were from St. Louis, you might say sports announcer.
Right.
Baseball announcer.
Mm-hmm.
If you were not from St. Louis, you'd say a Japanese suicidal ritual.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's right. So you see how cultural influences responses. Another question, one is on the IQ test, is what is the color of rubies? The boy said, "Is she black?"
my aunt was named Ruby.
Ruby, that's right. So, from his perspective, Ruby is aunt or a black woman, not a jewel.
Yeah, like sapphire.
Exactly. So, we have labeled cognitively things that we see in our culture differently. And this comes all the way back from when blacks were captives in this country. they had to identify things in their culture because they did not get a formal education, and they named things according to what they thought they were. And a lot of the things were named were African retentions, things that they had brought with them from Africa. And we all learn our language from our parents. So there are a lot of African retentions in our culture, such as soul food, jazz, gospel. You know, all of these are African retentions.